Today we are really excited to hear from two exceptional sustainability leaders to talk about how to undertake green initiatives and in a sector that required a really unique and nuanced approach in telling that story. So we have with us Gwen Migita, who is the lead executive on sustainability for Caesars Entertainment, and Annie Longsworth, who is CEO for North America for Saatchi and Saatchi S, which is a communications and consulting company whose mission it is to make sustainability irresistible. Today we're in the capable hands of our moderator, Tracy Sheerin, who is Director for the Center of Customer Insights at Yale, housed at the School of Management where we are today. Today we're joined also by our online audience via live stream. So hi everyone. I think I have some colleagues of mine tuning in from Germany. And make sure if you have questions for our panel here to submit them using the chat box. And I believe Laura will be then asking the questions to you guys. So before we get into today, I would just like to thank some of the people responsible for making this happen. From the Yale Center for Customer Insights, thank you to Tracy, as well as Heather Fitzgerald and Zoe Lloyd. From the Yale Center for Business and the Environment, Stuart DeCue and Amy Badner, thank you very much. These are the two centers who've been hosting this series. Our media partner for today was, for the series actually, was Sustainable Brands. You may know this website, fantastic resource. They also have a big conference coming up in June, which we're all excited to be at. I encourage you to check that out. So there's been several students who've really led the effort in putting this series together in this talk today, and I want to thank them very much. Maritza Galizia, in particular, led today's organising, and Rachel Freed and Laura Franciscini also here today and have done a wonderful job. So thank you again from DECRA, and over to you, Tracy. I think we have a bit less than 1 hour. We're going to finish slightly early because there's a dean's meeting that some of the students here need to be at. And so we'll keep an eye on the clock, but otherwise, welcome and thank you very much.
Thanks. Thank you both for coming. When we conceived of this series nearly a year ago, we really thought about how any sustainability project was built by a team and by partnerships. So we wanted to talk with partnerships like sustainability in operations, sustainability in marketing, sustainability in design. And today, we're lucky enough to talk to one of my favorite kind of partnerships, and that's client-agency partnership. So thank you. And with this audience, we don't get to hear these perspectives very often, so it's great you're here. To start out, a note on how we're going to run this. I will start out with a handful of questions that the students helped me craft, and then I will throw it to the audience here and online. And as Anastasia mentioned, we'll be wrapping up probably around 12:35 to get you guys on your way. So let's start with a little context. And if you two could tell me about yourselves, your career. Gwen, maybe you can start out. And I gotta say, looking at your resume, I was curious that you started out as a consultant in Tunisia. How did you move from a consultant in Tunisia to now the VP of Sustainability and Community Affairs at Caesars?
Sure. So I guess you could say my career was really following my passion, which with my work. And in that case, I graduated from University of Washington with my undergrad and wanted to go any place in the continent of Africa because I was more familiar with the Asia-Pacific region and Europe, having studied there. And had actually gotten very ill in Tunisia and moved back home to Hawaii to recover. Got a little bored, started looking around for work, and was fascinated by this field of consumer market research. And I'm just very interested in a continuous era of learning and kind of being the sponge or the gold mine of information, because it's I guess how my mind works, where I'm constantly looking for something new or different or that interests me, which drew me to Guam. So my boss in Hawaii called me up one day and said, I want you to take a job in Guam. And we opened up a market research arm there, stayed there for 4 years. Fast forward after 9/11 to Las Vegas and the connection then with Harris. But I was interested in moving out of consulting into the client side of the business, didn't quite know what to do, and saw this opportunity in government affairs, communications, and a couple of years in terms of a chief of staff position for the head of the senior management team over that area. And really, all this time over the course of 10 years, saw more interest in community affairs, social justice issues, and this, sort of the newer, more recent exposure around the environmental sustainability side came up when our CEO needed to find someone to organize a strategy. So that was 7 years ago.
And Annie, I've got to say that, and the phrase is all over, and you guys have branded it well, this making sustainability irresistible.
Yep.
Tell us how you, as CEO at Saatchi S, make that happen in your work.
The term is fantastic in that it's one of the more emotional terms within this context of really scientific and very sort of data-driven discussion. And so when you talk about irresistibility, everyone kind of leans forward and says, what are you talking about? But the idea behind it is that we're not going to make change happen if we continue to talk about the world ending, the world burning up, the polar bears dying, and all of us having no future for our grandchildren. It's not motivating. It doesn't help people understand what they should do to actually participate in change. So we think about irresistibility as looking at the abundance, the opportunity, the social equality, the joy that sustainability can bring, and making it so irresistible to consumers that they actually opt in and they participate. Whether they're doing it because polar bears are dying or not, they choose to participate in a way that's really productive for the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm. And how did your career path get you to this place?
I started out in journalism and moved into communications, and then I think my sort of aha moment was a convergence of inspiration from my family, my parents and my sisters, and having my second child, which is a big trigger for a lot of people, having a child. And then also almost a dare from my then boss, because I went back to work after maternity leave and said, I would like to start a sustainability practice. I've been here 4 years and I'm a little bored, and this is an up-and-coming thing. This is 2007. And her reaction within 2 seconds was, there is no way you will make money at that. And I still have that email because that was the nice dare that I needed to motivate me both from a sort of career challenge and an economic point of view, and the personal passion was already there.
Mm-hmm. That's great. For some context, for those who haven't read the several case studies that are written on Caesars at this point, Gwen, can you really give an overview of some of the programs that you've led?
Sure.
At Caesars?
Sure. Just want to give you in a context of Caesars as well. So a lot of people think that Caesars operates only in Las Vegas and just has a Caesars brand, but we have 14 brands. There's World Series of Poker, there's Caesars, Bally's, Harris, Horseshoe, Flamingo, Rio, Paris, Planet Hollywood, Showboat, and a few others. And we have a mini hotel chain, but it's about 45,000 hotel rooms throughout our properties. We have 50 properties throughout most of the U.S., North America, one in Canada, but mostly in the U.S., and 2.5 million square feet of convention space. So 50 million square feet of enclosed air-conditioned space. If you think about all of this, the company grew up, we're 80 years old as a company. We grew up by mergers and acquisitions. So we look at our buildings, our facilities are much older than competitors. We are gaming first, but now broadly speaking, more hospitality. So my background started in the market research area in the company. So I came on board prior to the acquisition of Caesars Entertainment, and we looked, the base interest around understanding the customers, understanding what our employees also wanted to see and hear and connect to, how they wanted to connect with the business, but also the public perception of the corporation in jurisdictions that we operate is very important because it's literally a license to operate. And the first two questions that a regulator or policymaker asks are not necessarily what we're doing around the environment, but what are you doing for our local businesses and what are you doing for our economy? So just kind of putting it in context with my scope of work, it's both on the social and environmental side of policies and strategies. We have a very decentralized company with the 70,000 employees, mostly throughout North America, but to pull it up into one overarching policy or strategy that started from the bottom up. I created a team with some colleagues to put a top-down approach to our long-term wanting to be one of the leaders in the broader hospitality industry on the environmental side. On the social sustainability side, looking to balance it out in terms of looking at ways to monetize our social impacts, looking at raising the awareness around what's core to our business. So that would be social safeguards and responsible gaming. Sorry, I'm trying to be very succinct in a very long response.
Complicated.
Yeah.
And how do the programs that you've worked together on in the last couple of years, how do they represent kind of the portfolio of clients you work with at Saatchi? Similarities, differences?
I mean, Saatchi has kind of three core buckets of work. We do strategy work, really helping companies figure out what it is they should be doing and sort of how to do it. Engagement work, which is mostly around employee engagement, and then communication, so internal, external communication. And so we don't really have a typical type of client, except to say that we're not very interested in working with companies that are sort of at the compliance level. Like if they're just doing what has to be done, that's not particularly exciting. We want the companies that have an authentic commitment to the long-term journey of sustainability. And then we want to help them figure out what that journey looks like and how to get there. And Caesars is sort of the perfect example, I think, of the clients we like working with because they tap into all the pieces of our business. You know, they hired us originally for strategy work, but now we're doing a lot of communications work for them. So it's really nice to work with a company that sees the opportunity and saw it, you know, pretty early in the scheme of things.
Mm-hmm. So there's a question that we've been kicking around quite a bit this week about the inherent tension in organizations and industries, often about the being a great corporate citizen in a really holistic way versus taking on bits of corporate citizenship. You know, a sustainability project here, a social responsibility project here or there. This tension, this continuum seems, the tension seems heightened in the gaming industry because I think there's a lot of skepticism of a gaming organization being socially responsible. How do you balance this skepticism with the good work you're actually doing, the real programs, particularly the programs within sustainability?
Sure.
Do you ever run into some skepticism challenges?
Skepticism only when we go externally in public presentations. But I think it's interesting where, you know, no matter what, I feel that as a professional, no matter what industry I choose to work in, I would have some level of skepticism because my tendency might be to work for a large corporation, so that's the one thing. You know, as an entertainment company, in the nature of our business, we're literally given a license to operate, and that license to operate was provided in jurisdictions where there was almost no industry. So Joliet, Illinois was the prison industry. Tunica, Mississippi were former cotton fields. So all these areas were built, or downtown New Orleans was needed an area to be revitalized, and it was clearly areas that a company to bring in literally thousands of jobs, or on average 1,500 jobs, and a large tax base was important for these partnerships. So our lead-in time to these newer jurisdictions were very much, I would say 3, 4, 5 years on. In Baltimore now, it's about a 5-year ramp up. So I would say that the skepticism will tend to always be there, but the fact is that the culture of the company is always something that has been longstanding around considering ourselves the white hat company of the gaming industry. That means that we will choose not to do business with a number of partners or choose to turn away business because we're seen to be potentially marketing to too young of a group, that being in the early 20s. Even if it's legal, we choose to go well above the law. The company is, and I am impressed by the company because I don't gamble, by the way. A lot of my colleagues at corporate don't gamble. We tend to be impressed, but I am impressed by the fact that the company is so generous and giving in terms of what we do as our own community. So if you look at the volunteer programs, every supervisor and up around the country is asked to participate in volunteer boards or give X number of hours per quarter. And you connect that to the environmental side, the fact that we have had no resistance and just a lot of positive intent and cooperation when our top-down strategy came down was, I guess it's highly unusual to have that level of collaboration. And I joke around by saying that there isn't you don't really hear a no, or you don't hear anyone say no in Caesars internally between property to corporate, because it's the culture of the company. It's to take on and it's a very entrepreneurial climate for the size of the company that we are, which is what interests me in staying there as well.
So there's another tension that's a little bit just, I think, really fascinating and fun, and that you touched on with the irresistibility. There's this tension in gambling that, gambling is kind of sexy. Staying at a luxury hotel is like all about abandon, like losing yourself, not thinking about things, not being responsible. On the other hand, the stereotype of green is very responsible, very dependable, and a little bit stuck in kind of hemp and hippies and as hippie at heart. I don't look like it. Hippie at heart, a little humorless. So how do you balance that tension from a branding and communications standpoint?
Yeah, it's a great question. So when Gwen and Caesars and Saatchi started working together, she came to us with this amazing program called CodeGreen, which had been up and running for 6 years, I think, at that point, and had incredible results attached to it in terms of achieving its goals in carbon and water and energy reduction. And so the first thing we say is, wow, there's serious intention here. This is a really cool program. They're actually measuring their data, which is something people often come back to instead of start with. And so the fact that they had started with it was fantastic. And then she said, but we need this to mean something to consumers. And so that was our challenge, was how do you translate CodeGreen into something that would be appealing and actually motivating for consumers. And she also had data that showed that consumers, the ones who knew about it, actually recognized and appreciated what Caesars was doing. So we did what we call our discovery process and sort of figuring this out, and we came back to her with what now feels like a very obvious conclusion, which was people who are at a bachelorette party in Las Vegas and they're to gamble and party and have fun don't care about carbon, the end. That was sort of it. But that didn't answer the question. The question was, okay, they don't care, but that still doesn't answer the question of how are we going to get them to care. And so that was sort of the next phase of our work, and really thinking through how to make a message that wasn't so sort of hammering over your head that you had to sort of feel guilty because you just wanted to play blackjack, but instead was a message that sort of buoyed the experience of the guest instead by creating an environment that was a little healthier and a little bit better. So there was a lot of just, we came up with a strategy, which is now being implemented in some of the properties, that we called the quiet surround, which was to continue to do all the work that Caesars was doing with CodeGreen, and communicate it in a much subtler way so that the guest who really does care, because they do exist, has an opportunity to learn what they want to learn through some clues and cues that are in the properties. And those who are there just to have a good time may not be interested in learning more, but they're still getting the benefit of the work that Caesars is doing by creating this environment that is a little bit healthier and better for the world. So it leads to another tension, which I don't know if you want to go there quite yet, but is, for companies the brands we work with now, a lot of them will say, well, our consumers don't want it. They haven't indicated through research and polling and everything else that they want this stuff. And our response is, who cares if they want it? You as an organization need to be ahead of your consumers, because you're going to be out of business if you don't, and you're not doing what you need to do as an organization. So Caesars is doing what it needs to do as a leading company and helping its consumers understand the benefits of that in a way that's really on brand in terms of the experience you have when you're in a property.
Mm-hmm. And I think that quiet surround, that approach, is particularly interesting, like used in a casino or in luxury hotel properties, because I think these industries have always known really well how to do this. So I don't know if you can think of an industry other than gambling that actually does a better job of using an understanding of psychology to nudge behavior, right? So was there anything that you took from the industry as you thought of this like experiential marketing? Any tricks of the trade?
Don't overwhelm your customer outside of that.
Yeah.
It's really the subtle surround, we call it eco-simplicity approach. Our marketers would love to find ways to sell space to advertisers in the casino itself. So you're constantly going through this. If they're not doing it for another way to get more revenue, how do we get airtime in the casino floor? So there's a lot of different touch points that Annie's group had helped us to come across. Everything from a button that would be highlighting a environmentally friendly feature on lighting, or recycling. That's often a question when it's our customers. Are you doing anything? Because I don't see any recycling bins front of house. We recycle everything. We sort through trash back of house, and that's these little signs that tell the customer what we're doing. Recycling back of house. Everything from there to pre and post visits. We're incorporating much more around into our existing mechanisms. So the last thing you want to tell a marketer is, let's create another mechanism for all the 10 channels or what have you that we're communicating through. So it's tagging on these subtle messages on a direct mail piece, as we're trying to move more to email or website or meetings and convention business, these touch points. And you have to constantly look at ways to refresh it, but in a big way, heavily educate your marketers on what you're trying to achieve. And it's not all about the optics, it's about supporting the larger program behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm. And that's a challenge, right? Because it's not necessarily that you own the campaign, but you're working with existing campaigns and trying to augment them. Is that what I'm understanding? Or add to them? If there's an email campaign going out for guests, you want to make sure that your message is part of that.
Right. Yeah. So that's where we got Saatchi's help to create what we call a CodeGreen catalog. So every property has to implement X number of CodeGreen messages on these 5 or 6 different mediums, from employee